The Brazilian Air Force is the air branch of the Brazilian Armed Forces and one of the three national uniformed services. The FAB was formed when the Army and Navy Air Branch were merged into a single military force initially called National Air Forces in 1941. Both air branches transferred their equipment, installations and personnel to the new force. According to the Flight International and the International Institute for Strategic Studies, the Brazilian Air Force has an active strength of 77,454 military personnel and operates around 627 aircraft. The Brazilian Air Force is the largest air force in the Southern Hemisphere and the second largest in the Americas after the United States Air Force. History. For a list of historic aircraft that has served with the Brazilian Armed Forces, see List of Brazilian military aircraft. Establishment. The establishment of the United Kingdom's Royal Air Force in April 1918, and the creation of the Italian Air Force and the French Air Force during the 1920s drove the idea of uniting Brazilian air power under the same organization. Together with these events, the Brazilian strategists were also influenced by the theories of Julio Douret, Billy Mitchell and Hugh Montague Trenchard. The first public manifest to create an integrated military air service came up in 1928 when an army major called Lysias Rodrigues wrote an article called An Urgent Need, the Ministry of the Air. 2 years later, the French military mission, working for the Brazilian army, made the first steps to organize a national air arm. The idea got more support when a group of Brazilian airmen came from Italy in 1934 and explained the advantages of having a military aviation unified. Also, the Spanish Revolution and the first movements of World War II at the end of the 30s showed the importance of air power for military strategies. One of the main supporters of the plan to create an independent air arm was the then-President Getulio Vargas. He organized a study group early in 1940 and the whole structure of the Ministry of Aeronautics was established the end of that year. This new governmental agency was responsible for all aspects of the civil and military aviation, including infrastructure, regulation and organization. Formally, the Ministry of Aeronautics was founded on January 20, 1941, and so its military branch, called National Air Forces, changed to Brazilian Air Force on May 22. The Army and Navy air branches were extinguished and all personnel, aircraft, installations and other related equipment were transferred to FAB. World War II. The Brazilian Air Force made important contributions to the Allied war effort in World War II, especially as part of the Brazilian Expeditionary Force on the Italian front. From mid-1942 until the end of the war, the FAB also patrolled the Atlantic. On the 31st of July 1943 it claimed the German submarine U-199, which was located on the surface off Rio de Janeiro, at 23.900 degrees south, 42.900 degrees west, minus 23.900, minus 42.900. Two Brazilian aircraft, a PBY Catalina and a Lockheed Hudson, and an American PBM Mariner attacked the U-boat. The Catalina, named Arara, was captained by Second Ten Av Alberto M. Torres, and hit U-199 with depth charges, sinking her. 49 of the crew were killed, although 12 Germans managed to escape, including the captain. This was possible due to the Catalina's crew, who threw a lifeboat to the survivors. First Gruppo de Aviação de Caça, which saw action in Italy, was formed on December 18, 1943. Its commanding officer was 10 Cell. Av Nero Moura. The group had 350 men, including 43 pilots. The group was divided into 4 flights: red, yellow, blue, and green. The CO of the group and some officers were not attached to any specific flight. Unlike the BEF's Army component, the 1st GAVCA had personnel who were experienced Brazilian Air Force pilots. One of them was Alberto M. Torres, who had piloted a PBY Catalina that had sunk U-199, operating off the Brazilian coast. The group trained for combat in Panama, where 2nd Ten. Av Dante Isidoro Gastaldoni was killed in a training accident. On May 11, 1944, the group was declared operational and became active in the air defense of the Panama Canal Zone. On June 22, the 1st GAVCA traveled to the U.S. to convert to the Republic P-47D Thunderbolt. On September 19, 1944, the 1st GAVCA left for Italy, arriving at Livorno on October 6. It became part of the 350th Fighter Group of the USAAF, which in turn was part of the 62nd Fighter Wing, 22 Tactical Air Command, of the 12th Air Force. The Brazilian pilots initially flew from the 31st of October 1944, as individual elements of flights attached to 350th FG squadrons, at first in affiliation flights and progressively taking part in more dangerous missions. Less than 2 weeks later, on November 11, the group started its own operations, flying from its base at Tarquinia, using its tactical call sign Jambok. Brazilian Air Force stars replaced the white U.S. star in the Randall and the FAB Thunderbolts. The 1 Ogivka started its fighting career as a fighter-bomber unit, its missions being armed reconnaissance and interdiction, in support of the U.S. Fifth Army, to which the FEB was attached. On April 16, 1945, the U.S. Fifth Army started its offensive along the Po Valley. By then, the strength of the group had fallen to 25 pilots, some having been killed and others shot down and captured. Some others had been relieved from operations on medical grounds due to combat fatigue. The group disbanded the Yellow Flight and distributed the surviving pilots among the other flights. Each pilot flew on average 2 missions a day. On the 22nd of April 1945, the 3 remaining flights took off at 5-minute intervals, starting at 8:30 a.m., to destroy bridges, barges, and motorized vehicles in the San Benedetto region. At 10 a.m., a flight took off for an armed reconnaissance mission south of Mantua. They destroyed more than 80 tanks, trucks, and vehicles. By the end of the day, the group had flown 44 individual missions and destroyed hundreds of vehicles and barges. On this day, the group flew the most sorties of the war. Consequently, Brazil commemorates April 22 Brazilian Fighter Arm Day. In all, the 1 Ogivka flew a total of 445 missions, 2,550 individual sorties, and 5,465 combat flight hours. For the 11th of November 1944 to the 6th of May 1945, the 22 Tactical Air Command acknowledged the efficiency of the group by noting that although it flew only 5% of the total of missions carried out by all squadrons under its control, it accomplished a much higher percentage of the total destruction wrought: 85% of the ammunition depots, 36% of the fuel depots, 28% of the bridges, 15% of motor vehicles, 10% of horse-drawn vehicles. Post-World War II. After the war, the FAB began flying the British Gloster Meteor jet fighter. The jets were purchased from the British for 15,000 tons of crude cotton, as Brazil had no foreign currency reserves to spare. The jet was operated by the FAB until the mid-1960s, when it was replaced by the F-8 OC and T the F-33A, which were later replaced by the MB-326, Mirage 3 and Northrop F-5 jets, having been given authority over all national military aircraft since 1941. From her commissioning in 1961 to 1999, the Brazilian Air Force flew the S-2 trackers of the aircraft carrier Minas Gerais, while from 1965 Naval Aviation flew its own helicopters. Now Naval Aviation is also authorized to fly its own fixed-wing carrier-based aircraft. Cold War. During the Cold War, the then Brazilian dictatorship was aligned with the United States and NATO. This meant that the F-5 could be bought cheaply from the United States, who called this jet the Freedom Fighter. Many other countries, such as Mexico, also benefited from this policy. The Embraer has its origins as an enterprise directly managed and sponsored by the FAB. Working with Italian corporations, it developed the new AMX attack aircraft, which makes up the backbone of the FAB's attack force. The successful Tucano T-27 trainer and the new light attack aircraft A-29 are also Embraer aircraft used extensively by the FAB. During Trera operation, in February 1991, 6 Tucanos were used for close air support against a group of 40 rebels from the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, which had seized a Brazilian military detachment. Brazilian Air Force today: air defense and strike aircraft, airborne early warning, reconnaissance aircraft and maritime patrol. Transport and air-to-air refueling aircraft. Helicopters. Developments in the early 2000s, with renewed economic stability, the FAB underwent an extensive renewal of its inventory through several acquisition programs, the most ambitious of which was the acquisition of 36 new frontline interceptor aircraft to replace its aging Mirage 3, known in the late 1990s as the FX project. The program was postponed during the presidential mandate of Fernando Henrique Cardoso, who in the end of 2002 left the decision for his successor Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who postponed it again in 2003 and 2004. It was postponed indefinitely in 2005. On July 15, 2005, one agreement was set with the French government for the transfer of 12 Dassault Mirage 2000 second-hand XARME Acute de l'Air, known as F-2000s in Brazil. The first 2 aircraft arrived at Anápolis Air Base on September 4, 2006. In 2007, Brazilian Air Force's Institute for Advanced Studies started the 14X development, a hypersonic scramjet demonstrator envisaged to fly at 30 km of altitude at 3 km per second, corresponding to Mach number 10. In March 2012, a Mach 7 variation has been suggested, named as 14XS. On November 4, 2007, the FX project was restarted, known as Project FX2 from the start of 2008, and with a bigger budget. The competitors for acquisition were the Eurofighter Typhoon, Sukhoi Su-35, Gripen Eng, Dassault Rafale, Boeing FA-180F Super Hornet, and, although information on Lockheed Martin's F-35 Lightning II was requested, Lockheed Martin presented an F-16 Fighting Falcon variant. In October 2008, FAB released a shortlist of 3 aircraft: Saab Gripen Eng, Dassault Rafale and Boeing FA-180F Super Hornet. In February 2009, the 3 companies provided the final bids. In September 2009, following a surprise French visit to Brazil, Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva and Nicolas Sarkozy from France made a new military cooperation agreement. Lula, on an interview at TV5 Monde, said French Rafale was a step forward, as technology transfer would be effective. On September 7, 2009, Brazilian Independence Day, it was announced Brazil would negotiate 36 Dassault Rafale, but the defense minister did not confirm the final decision. On January 5, 2010, after lobbying by Air Force officers and commanders, it was reported that the final evaluation report by the Brazilian Air Force placed the Saab Gripen E ahead of the other contenders. The decisive factor was apparently the overall cost of the new fighters, both in terms of unit cost and operating and maintenance costs, and the personal preference of the test pilots. Rafale was reported to not even be the second choice. It was announced in February 2011 that the decision would be further delayed due to budget cuts, and that July the decision was put off for yet another 6-month extension. However, in 2013, yet another 6-month delay was announced. In early June 2013, after a visit from U.S. Vice President Joe Biden with Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff, Biden assured President Rousseff that the U.S. Congress would approve technology transfer for Boeing's F-18s, in a move apparently following the NSA spying scandal. Russia has also offered Brazil a stake in the development of the Sukhoi Pak-FA 5th-generation jet fighter with complete stealth technology transfer. Saab won the competition on the 18th of December 2013. The change away from the American jet was due to the 2013 global surveillance disclosure, according to Reuters reporting. Other sources agree with the official rationale that the decision was due to cost and technological transfer. As of January 2014, Brazil is in negotiations with Saab to lease current model Gripens while they wait 4 years for the next generation jets on order to be developed and built. On July 28, 2015, the Brazilian government met with the Swedish Trading Commission to revisit the contract and request a low of 2.58% in interest rates to 1.98% per annum, generating a savings of $1 billion in 25 years. Sweden rejected the application, and signing the contract is seriously threatened with limit until October 2015. On July 29, 2015, the Brazilian government confirms that it has reached an agreement with Sweden to finance the purchase of a batch of 36 Gripen E. The contract should be signed in the coming days. The negotiations are part of the FX project to renew the country's Air Force command structure. The Brazilian Air Force is the aerospace branch of the Brazilian Armed Forces and is managed by the Aeronautics Command. The COMAIR was created in 1999 and replaced the Ministry of Aeronautics. Now, the COMAIR is one of the 3 armed forces assigned to the Ministry of Defense. The COMAIR is led by the Aeronautics Commander. The commander is a Tenente Brigadier Oduah, is appointed by the President, and reports directly to the Minister of Defense. COMAIR comprises 6 major components, 4 general commands, and 2 departments. The General Command of Air Operations, with headquarters in Brasilia, supervises most of the flying operations. As the main flying element, COMGAR administers several sub-formations in the form of 4 air forces and 7 regional air commands. Besides COMGAR, other major parallel organizations, which also report directly to the COMAIR, are the General Command of Support, General Command of Personnel, General Command of Aerospatial Technology, Aeronautics Department of Teaching, Department of Civil Aviation, and Department of Airspace Control. Operations. A recent operation of the FAB was the bombing of illegal landing sites in the Amazon forest. used by drug dealers to transport drugs into and out of Brazil. The operation also had support from the Brazilian Army and Brazilian Federal Police, with many drug dealers being arrested as a result. The AMX bomber fighter was the primary plane used. The FAB is currently working on the United Nations stabilization mission in Haiti, supporting the United Nations force deployed there. In 2010, the FAB worked on the search and AMP rescue mission of Air France Flight 447. The Brazilian Air Force has started a search and rescue from the Brazilian archipelago of Fernando de Noronha, sending 8 planes to search a stretch bounded by the coastal cities of Recife, Natal and the archipelago of Fernando de Noronha. In 2011 to 2013, Operation Agatha marks the start of a new decade of the 21st century with the consolidation of the Amazon surveillance system, an intricate network of radars, meteorological sensors, digital satellite communications, and advanced air traffic control software, among other technological advances available to Brazilian military personnel. The Brazilian Air Force, which deployed new tactics and methods of fighting using RQ-450 remote-controlled aircraft, operating in conjunction with sophisticated E-99 Guardian planes. They will locate objectives for A-29 Super Tucano fighters flying in darkness, Northrop F-5EM fighters, responsible for providing air superiority. In July 2016, Defense Aerospace Brazilian Command displays participation of Brazilian Air Force at the Olympics Games Rio 2016. There will be over 15,000 military and 80 aircraft involved in the Olympics. Defense missions: an aerial patrol, 32 fighters, 4 aerial warning missions, 2 radar aircraft, surveillance missions, 3 unmanned aircraft, for maritime patrol missions 1, for logistical support missions 15 helicopters. Exercises: the CRUZ-X Air Force exercises are the most important of its type in South America. They are hosted every 2 years by the Brazilian Air Force. Issues and participants: CRUZ-X I-2002 South Region, participation of 90 aircraft; CRUZ-X 2004 Northeast Region, participation of 92 aircraft; CRUZ-X 2006 Central West Region, participation of 104 aircraft; CRUZ-X IV 2008 Northeast Region, participation of 100 aircraft; CRUZ-X V 2010 Northeast Region, participation of 97 aircraft; CRUZ-X I 2012 Northeast Region, personnel only, no aircraft; CRUZ-X Flight 2013 Northeast Region, participation of 96 aircraft. Air units: organization at unit levels. Groups usually consist of 1 to 16 consecutively numbered squadrons, each with varying numbers of aircraft, usually from 6 to 12. Smaller formations are known as flights. According to its tasks, a group has one of the following designations: Air Defense Group, Grupo de Defesa Aérea, Air Defense Fighters; Transport Group, Grupo de Transport, Transport, Flight Refueling; Aviation Group, Grupo de Aviação, Fighter, Attack, Reconnaissance, SAR, Rotary Wing; Fighter Aviation Group, Grupo de Aviação de Caça, Fighter, Attack Planes; Troop Transport Group, Grupo de Transport de Tropa, Transports, Troop Carrying Parachutes, Drop; Special Flight Inspection Group, Grupo Especial de Inspeção MV, Calibration; Special Test Flights Group, Grupo Especial de Ensaios de Voo, Test Flights; Special Transport Group, Grupo de Transporte Especial, VIP Transport. Common used designations for squadrons are Air Transport Squadron, Esquadrão de Transporte Aéreo, Air Training Squadron, Escuadrão de Instrução Aérea, Demonstration Flying Team, Esquadrão de Demonstração Aérea. The air bases of the Brazilian Air Force are: Inventory, Aircraft Weapons Bibliography, Hackett, James, ed. The Military Balance, London. International Institute for Strategic Studies, Rutledge. ISBN 185743-557-5.